What could change in your life if you moved from communicating to really connecting? Whether you're leading your family, a team, an organization, or a church, you have to make those powerful connections that increase your influence and facilitate visionary advancements. Powerful connections take more than just verbal skills and mechanics. It requires connecting better through the values of relationship. Have you ever said, "Why aren't people seemingly listening to me?" Or why aren't people coming alongside and helping out the vision that I'm casting? Why aren't people following me? If you've ever asked those questions, we're going to address some of those today and more on the Five Gifts podcast. Welcome to the Five Gifts podcast. I'm your co-host, Bruce Ritter, along with my co-host, Charles Russell. Together, we want to help Christian leaders rediscover Christ speaking and acting in the local church.
Well, hey, welcome to the Five Gifts podcast. Glad that you're joining us today. Welcome, Bruce. Good to see you. And it's Monday, and it's a new episode, a new day to talk about the five gifts and leadership and different areas. We're continuing our series, I guess, on communication, personal communication, and how that affects us. And so before we get into the content, I guess, anything exciting happened this week for you, Bruce? Anything good go on?
Yeah, a couple of things. We're looking at our Dominican Republic trip coming up in July. Starting to see that come together. Looks like we're going to be in about 3 different locations doing ministry, training pastors, church leaders. We got a team coming together, which I'm really excited about. And if you're interested in going on a powerful missions trip, especially in the country, the Dominican Republic, which I believe is on the verge of a genuine generational revival. You might want to think about going with us in July.
Absolutely. Pack your bags. Come go with us. It's going to be a great trip. You and I have been twice and done 2 of these ministry trips together, and just amazing what God is doing through His body of believers in the Dominican Republic. Such passion and vibrant a vibrant faith being expressed. It's just incredible. I can remember the first pastors conference that you and I did there. We started. It was like 8 or 9 that morning. Went all day long till about 5 o'clock that afternoon. Just packed in the auditorium. No air conditioning. We were tired, sweat through our clothes, wringing wet. And we walked out of the building, and I just remember saying, "Man, Bruce, I'm ready to go again. Let's do this again." It was exciting. Just the energy and the passion
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
Christian leaders and pastors had in those moments. So we invite you to come go with us. If you want to be transformed, this is a great opportunity to do that. Plus, I mean, the food is there anything like Dominican Republic food? Rice and beans, the con. I know I pronounce that wrong every time, but man, I love it. So
well, you have like a North Carolina pronunciation of it.
if Gomer Pyle went to the Dominican Republic, it'd sound like me. So yeah. Well, that's exciting. I'm looking forward to it in July, and it's going to be a great time. Well, we're talking about communication, and Bruce, you opened us up with some really good thought provoking questions about why aren't people following me? Why aren't people helping me? Why aren't people connecting to my leadership? Those kind of questions, that kind of thinking. And maybe those are probably natural and typical questions. I know I've found myself asking those kind of questions, as I've reflected over my life, going through different leadership situations, just wondering, why won't anybody come alongside me? But I had to begin to say, well, maybe I have the wrong perspective of, well, Charles, maybe you've got to begin to quit asking everybody to help you, help me, help me, help me, and begin to turn that outward to serve others. And so it creates this tension in my life that I had to work through, and I think that most leaders have to work through, of getting through selfishness or being self-centered. Oftentimes, a self-centered teacher or a leader or a speaker, seems to be a lot of the context that we're working through. We miss incredible opportunities in life by failing to connect. And here's this is kind of the way that looks. Good teachers, good leaders, good speakers. We should see ourselves as guides and focus on helping others to learn. So as we're leading, as we're teaching, as we're speaking, as we're influencing others, um, I think a great principle to kind of pattern ourselves after, and certainly probably the premise and the thought of this podcast episode is that we're not there to recruit an army to help us. We're doing these things to serve others, to be a guide, to help people focus on their learning, on their advancement, and man, I'm telling you that's not. I don't think that's natural. I think that has to be learned and that has to be developed within our lives. And so we're going to try to spend a good portion of this episode just talking about this, uh, balancing and managing this tension, because I don't think you solve it. I don't think it ever goes away. But in our leadership, in leading and influencing others, balancing and managing this tension. Am I simply investing in them, or pursuing them for my gain and benefit, or am I trying to serve them and help them,
Mm.
to help them advance, to help them grow? So maybe we'll keep those kind of thoughts and ideas and questions at the forefront of our mind and our discussion today. And so Bruce, with that in mind, we'll throw you the first question of the day. When did you experience a light bulb moment that shifted you from a communicator into being a connector?
Well, for me, that was a mental shift that came about 7 years into pastoral ministry. And so this is hardly a testimony as much as it is a confession. The 7 years into pastoral ministry is a lot of time that I thought there were wasted opportunities
Mm-hmm.
because I was lacking understanding. And so again, about 7 years into lead pastoring, where I am now, I I got into coaching, and so that was one of the catalysts that helped bring me into a better understanding of what was going on. Because I think for 7 years I focused on creating and gathering and presenting content
Mm.
instead of asking, what does my congregation need? What does
Yeah.
my staff need? What do they value? What are their dreams? Because I think what happens, especially in younger ministers, and
Mm-hmm.
I can speak to younger ministers because I've been there and I know that experience. But when so much of the focus is on content, we're thinking, I've got things to say.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't consider the other dimensions of communication, then you're flattening out your influence.
Yeah.
You're kind of living in a one-dimensional approach to ministry where you're always seeing things from the content you have to present, the ideas, and let's be honest. I mean, since I opened up the well of confession this morning, when I began to see that my content wasn't moving people, you know what I did? I began to look at what other people were presenting in their
Yeah.
content.
Yeah.
And, the answer is not always in coming up with a better idea, a better hook, a
Mm-hmm.
better selling point. You have to turn your attention on to people. And there's a couple of principles that I think about, and we'll get into them more. But one thing John Maxwell says is you have to leave your place and visit their place. You have to
Yeah.
you have to begin to look at life from their perspective and what they value, what they're looking for. And for example, you're going to have people in your church, and there's something that got them in the door.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about leading people, um, you're never going to lead people to a place without looking through the lens of their life and how they, looking at what moves them, what motivates them, what they care about. And um, it's like it's like, I know as a pastor, you feel like you're communicating truth. You've got your message together. Preaching is so much about learning to present compelling ideas and getting
Mm-hmm.
a biblical message out, which, I mean, what's more important than the word? What's more important than preaching the word and preaching it well and expositing? But when communication only only goes through uh, that direction, and it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
consider how people are receiving it and how and what they care about, and what they value as their, it's hard to really move people. It's hard to move people on to a vision that is compelling
Mm-hmm.
if you're not getting into their world and helping communicate it in a way that they begin to see the value of it through their lens and into their life.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
um, the Zig Ziglar quote is, if
Mm-hmm.
you first help people get what they want, they will help you get what you want.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of something else Dale Carnegie said. He
Mm-hmm.
said you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you
Mm-hmm.
can make in 2 years by trying to get people interested in you.
Yeah.
And so, Charles,
Well,
how about when you
well,
think
I
about
was
that?
just going to
That
say, you talked about that. I like both of those quotes. Number one, the Dale Carnegie quote. I found that I'm just not very interesting, and so it's a lot easier, a lot better for me
Mhm,
to as I've learned over the years to spend time finding out about others and turning the conversation to hear their story.
mhm.
And then you talked about Zig Ziglar. Um, I was a young boy when he was kind of around, and so I've got a fascinating connection to Zig Ziglar. Um, this probably explains the depth of my weirdness, but when I was a little boy, um, I had an imaginary friend. His name was Leroy Ziegler. He was Zig Ziglar's son. Now I don't know how that happened or came about, but me and Leroy were thick as thieves. I'm just going to tell you. My parents had this exercise bike, and like most exercise bikes in the world, they didn't use it. But I got on that exercise bike, and me and Leroy, we rode all over town every day. So so if you had any questions, what's wrong with this guy? Well, that might
Right.
give you a little bit of insight. So
Well, Charles, I want to know why we haven't had Leroy on the podcast yet.
I'll see if I can get in touch with him. Maybe he needs an
Um,
exercise bike to get to where we are.
well, Charles, we're talking about a kind of leadership that is almost counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is counterintuitive as a leader to
Well, I
take?
mean, that whole idea that Zig Ziglar talks about, help if you first help people get what they want, they'll help you get what you want. And so leadership, communication, making connections, what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, has to come from a posture and a place of wanting to serve people. I want to serve you. I see the dreams and the desires in your heart. I see the talents and gifts God's given you, and So I want to inspire you. I want to motivate you. I want to help you focus on your learning, on your advancement. I want to help you get to those places that God's put in your heart. To me, that's a mark of exemplary leadership. Not just achieving my goals, but those that are serving with me, helping those people reach in a dream, reach and achieve the dreams and goals that they feel God's put before them. And what I've discovered is as a leader, is if I will do that, then it's just amazing how people will then turn around and serve and work alongside me and with me to and I'm talking in a church context here, as you know, people will work with you and serve with you to achieve those God vision, dreams and goals that He set for His local body. So you know, an example of that was doing, helping or beginning to identify leaders. We were at a place, excuse me, we needed more leaders. We in order to sustain the size of the church was growing, and so we were just running thin on leaders and didn't want to burn people out. We needed to get healthy, and so we had to add leaders and workers in the church. And so we began doing just a book study. It was a book written years ago called The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson, and just a great book. And so it impacted mine and Juliana, my wife. It impacted our lives, and so we thought this will be a great book to lead people through. We added in some spiritual gifts assessments and a couple other kinds of assessments just to give a snapshot of the work and activity of Christ in our life at the present moment. And so we were heavy on the assessments up front, and then we did the book study for, I think, I don't know, 7 or 8 weeks. Just worked through the book, a lot of discussion, a lot of reflection, a lot of praying, a lot of dreaming, and and just identified people in the congregation that we felt were ready to take those next steps into ministry or leadership roles. And we would just, Juliana and I would just sit around the table, just in a small group format, and work through this book, pray with people, dream with people. And it was amazing over this, including the assessments and then the book study, about an 8 or 9 week process, just spending time with people. Their dreams begin to surface. Their what they perceive to be God's vision for their life began to bubble up to the top, and those were some light bulb moments or some aha moments for people that were extremely transformational. And so by the end of our study and our time together, they had a really good sense and grasp of what they felt God was leading them into, as kind of a life mission, to be pursued and expressed through their lives. And so we would wrap up our time. Juliana and I would just sit and have a kind of a one-on-one or a private interview with each of our small group members, and just talk about and celebrate with them this vision that they felt like, this dream that they felt like God had surfaced for them during this discovery process. And then as pastor, I know the comprehensive plan of the ministry and the working of the church. And I know, you know, we're going to always be strategic. And so we don't want all of our leaders and workers in the same area of the church. There's a comprehensive working of the church. And so I would listen to their dreams and I had their assessments, and I could see where the Lord was working in their life, hear these dreams and visions that God was surfacing for them. And they were ready to serve. They were ready to work, ready to lead, because God had done this supernatural work in them. And so now it was an easy, it was an easy transition, not to manipulate them, by any means, because they had discovered what they felt God wanted for them, and so now it was easy to say, well, here's how you can express this now in the confines and
Mhm.
the workings of this local church that you're a part of.
Yeah.
And you hear the stories of people talk about, well, I've been stuck in the nursery for 12 years, or I've been stuck in this ministry for 12, and just they're miserable, and there's no joy, there's no excitement
Mhm.
about where they're serving. Um, we found that to just be a very helpful and a very inspiring means by which we identified, trained, placed leaders, and it wasn't based on, well, hey, here's what I need, you come help me. It was all centered on the idea of, wow, this is what God's doing in your life, and this is where you're sensing the Lord wants to lead you and take you. And so we want, as your pastors and as your friends, as your brothers and sisters in Christ, we want to come along beside you. We want to help you get to those places. We want to help you express the ministry and the work of Christ through your life. And so here's some ways in this local church you can do that. And people were thrilled to take this new expression and begin to give it hands and feet in the life of the local church where that they were part of.
Mm.
And so that was something that we kind of stumbled into, but has served us well in our ministry in pastoring different churches in different contexts. That same principle of, if you'll serve others and help them get what they want, that's where you make the connection, and through that connection, it's returned. They'll be inclined to want to come and serve along with you as well.
Charles, you bring up a powerful image. I think in uh, that whole experience was you brought people to a table.
Hmm.
You brought people to sit down. Um, I'm assuming it was a round table. It was something where people were, table. The image is people are focused inward, talking to one another, rather than, someone at the head of the table addressing everybody.
Yeah.
I just think that's such a powerful image, and I know um, there's something of value when you bring people to that kind of environment,
Hmm.
especially when the purpose is share with me, tell me your story, tell me your dream, tell me your,
Yeah.
tell me the things that you really value in life. I It reminds me of our first, my wife and I, our first year together, married, um, being on staff at a church and really not knowing anything about how to do ministry other than what we thought we knew.
Yeah.
One of the great lessons in ministry is um, once you know that you don't know, that's a huge moment. And we were in that place, and I remember there was a an elderly couple. He was still active in ministry. In fact, I think even about 5 or 6 years after we um, left there, he planted another church. Uh, just just a tremendous leader. His name was Carol Daniels, and his wife was Evelina. And so our first year in being married, living on the Outer Banks, um, Sister Evelina took such a um, she just she just came close to us. She got
Hmm.
involved in our life. She had us over. Um, this young ministry couple. She just invested time and energy. We learned so many lessons just by watching her. And
Yeah.
now I'm telling the story for a purpose. Uh, we didn't have a dining room table,
Okay.
and she gifted us with a dining room table. They had just built a new house, and they were, bringing in some new furniture, and she wanted us to have this dining room table. And
Hmm.
every night when my wife and I would sit at that table, we would constantly, uh, bring up that this was Evelina's table. We wonder how many conversations she had with people over the years
Yeah. Yeah.
at that table. And we'd gotten to know her kindness and her hospitality, and so it was such an honor to have that piece of
Hmm.
furniture in our house because it just represented so many stories and so it began to help us to see that ministry was about relationships. It was about
Yeah.
bringing people into your life and talking with them and conversing with them. And so when you shared that story about bringing a small group around a table to discuss the dream giver, um, that's such a powerful image, and I think it's helpful maybe that if you're a teacher, if you do public communication, if you're in a pulpit or behind a lectern, you've got to find time to get around the table with people.
Absolutely.
Maybe not literally, but you've got to have that kind of relationship with people
Hmm.
on some level. It improves your ability to connect, and again, connection is what improves communication with people.
Yeah. 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 If there's no connection there, it's very difficult to lead and influence people to a place where they're going to grow and to a place that's going to help continue to advance and further the family, the team, the organization, the church, whatever it is that you're tasked with leading and influencing. It's critical to have those powerful connections in place.
Yeah. Well, that leads us to maybe another area of connecting to remember as a leader, is that connecting really isn't about me.
Mm.
Um, I've often thought that when it comes to leadership, you have to have a strong presence. But that's not simply being the person at the top that's telling everyone what to do. Um, it is about making connections with people, and even in doing that, the connecting is really not about you. It's about them. It's about the person that I'm trying to convey a message to. I'm trying to interact with them and lead them. And so, if you want to connect with people, um, you've got to get over you. And if if anyone listening to this podcast knows what it's like to feel uh, insufficient, ill-equipped,
Hmm.
um, well, I think one of the most helpful things you can do is remember that when you're communicating, it's not about any of that.
Yeah.
Um, it's a burden you can happily unload when you realize that communication is not about you being the focus. It's about putting other people as the focus.
Absolutely.
And I think about some of the reasons that we don't do that. Kind of in this,
Hmm.
why is this so counterintuitive? What's because so a lot of times the problem is with us. Some of the reasons we don't connect well with people is, and I'll be honest, I think this is something that most young ministers can age out of.
Hmm.
As you get older, these lessons become, I think, hopefully they're a natural course of life for people in ministry. But one of the reasons that people don't connect is immaturity, um, and immaturity is that I'm the leader, I'm driving this organization, and it's all on me. And the truth is, it's not. You have got
Hmm.
to get people working with you. You've got to connect them to vision, and you've got to help them to see the value of being a part of this agenda or this vision or uh, this way of doing church. And so getting past your immaturity is really key. And so, what is maturity? Well, maturity is the ability to see and act on behalf of others.
Hmm.
Um, that's why I've always heard that the most secure person in the room is the servant,
Hmm.
because they're concerned with the needs of other people. They know that their role in any room is to help improve, to help to help elevate, to
Hmm.
add value to people, and so immaturity is where the focus is all on me.
Yeah.
It's hard for an immature person to see life from someone else's point of view. Um, you think of a young child where, um, if they're in a car ride and they're hungry or they've spilled their food on themselves, the world stops.
Hmm.
Everything is revolving around them, and um, so a mature person is able to recognize that we're not the center of the universe. That we have to work through other people's experiences, and um, so Charles, how is this perspective difficult in today's world? I think that's an important question to ask because so
Yeah.
much of so much of the culture is the focus is on what do you need and what do you want, but as a leader you've got to be able to turn that around, um, and get past yourself, for other people. So
Yeah.
immaturity is one reason. What were you going to add?
Well, excuse me. I was just going to say that we live in a very immature world. Uh,
Hmm.
Again, and we could probably spend an entire episode just talking about this dynamic. But um, I know I'm guilty of of uh, of taking the easy road of leadership. Uh, I, I can point to a few different times of just taking the easy road or hitting the easy button and saying, "Well, I'm the pastor and this is what we're doing." I'm the boss. Um, and I recognize there 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 are occasions and there are times that those kind of things, those kind of decisions or statements may be warranted, but that can't be your leadership style.
Hmm.
If you're going to lead by making connections, and if you're going to lead from a mature place, if you're going to be able to see and act on behalf of others, um, it has to be from a place of service and I think collaboration. And so whereas as the leader is not the leader is taking all the input and all of the voices excuse me, it's taking all the voices and kind of orchestrating or composing now with the multiple voices composing harmonies that are pleasing and that are that are attractive. There's when you've got a talented group of vocalists who sing in harmony, it's very pleasing to the ear. It's very attractive. It just draws you in, and I think that's a good picture, a good visual of leadership and of making connections. Is the leader has to hear the voices, has to hear the
Hmm.
ideas, has to be willing to take those different notes and from those voices and weave them together into harmonies that lifts up the organization, that lifts up the team and the family, again, whatever's being led. And
Yeah.
it takes a great deal of maturity um, to be able to lay my idea down and take the ideas of others and say, "Wow, together this is much better than what I ever came up with on my own." Um,
Yeah.
So I think I'm better today than I used to be, but I've certainly got a long way to go in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the idea of your ego,
Uh
or
huh.
and when my ego, sometimes that can be a driving factor. I'm so consumed with what I need out of this, and being finding my own self affirmation.
Yeah.
And so ego is a huge reason. It's a huge obstacle to connecting with people. Um, so immaturity and ego, I think those are obviously two that in some cases they go together. Um, but if I could get through a couple others, Charles, and then you're going to take us through a couple of questions that we need to ask. Um, but I think another reason people don't connect is the failure to value other people in the
Mm.
organization. Um, And if you listen to a leader's stories, if their stories are always about them and their successes, then I think sometimes that can be an indicator that that who they see as the key to this operation. And then
Yeah.
I think so that failure to value everyone. Something I think we need to ask from time to time is um, who in my life or on my team do I have a challenge seeing the value
Mm.
in? And I think it's important. And instead of doing a self inventory, take an inventory of your staff, take an inventory of key leaders, and begin to look at the genuine gifts of God in their life and how they could prove valuable to where you see the activity of God in your church, and because then you begin to connect those opportunities and the potential that they have and what you're trying to accomplish. Um, and maybe a last reason is insecurity, and I think an insecure leader um, needs to they need to do a lot of time before the Lord, because anytime you're insecure, I think sometimes the tendency is overcompensate,
Hmm.
and then another tendency is to almost check out, and it puts us into situations where uh, we're not leading from a pure sense of our own abilities, and sometimes it comes off fake. Um, so if you think about your insecurities, you might want to think, what are those things that are hindering me from in my own insecurities from connecting with people, and what do I have to overcome?
Yeah, man, those are some powerful questions to reflect on. Again, as we're talking about connecting, all of our communication, we want to be focused on connecting with others. And so, how can we improve in these
Yeah,
areas? Well, we've talked a lot about focusing on ourselves and what are some things that we need to change, or what are we thinking. Um, but there's three questions that I think people are asking about us as we're interacting and communicating with them. These are some questions that might be rolling through their minds as we're talking. First one would simply be, do you care for me? If we're going to make a connection with people in our communication, there has to be a sense and an understanding that yes, I care for you. This is a question that people are asking. So we just got to be aware of that as we're speaking, as we're talking, again, from a platform, from behind a pulpit with a microphone, or in a small group or one on one. This is a question that's being asked in people's minds about us, about the communicator. Does this person care for me? Um, so there needs to be this sense of mutual concern, because that's what creates connection between people, is when people know that they are being cared for, or that they are cared for by the communicator. Um, whenever whenever we can help people understand that we genuinely care about them, what happens is we open the door to connection, communication, and interaction. When people feel cared for, um, they can trust us, and there's an opportunity then to make connection. Second question would be this: can you help me? I think people are asking this question about the communicator as well. Can you help me? And so, what, as the communicator, we have to be, if we're going to make connection, and again, that's the goal. If we're going to do that, we've got to be aware of this. Am I selling when I'm communicating, or am I helping? Am I trying to sell something to them, or am I trying to help them? Am I selling myself, or am I helping them? Um, that's a critical distinction. I think we talked about some of that last week, about moving away from trying to sell ourselves and moving into a new understanding, a new posture of communication whereby we can make connection by serving, by helping people. We want to be helpers. We want our communication to help others. And so when we're helping, it lends to us making connection. The third question would be this: can I trust you? Again, when we're communicating in these different environments, I believe people are asking the question, can I trust him? Can I trust her? And so as we communicate, we can keep those things in mind. I think it increases, it helps our communication, but certainly it increases the likelihood of making a connection with, again, if it's one-on-one, a small group, or in a larger group context.
Yeah. Charles, those are all great things to be mindful of when you're in the mode of communication, because it goes to the connection first. So I think you're giving us some insight into a way to be mindful of how people are viewing you, and what are they asking of you as a leader? What are they thinking about you as a leader when it comes to uh, that place of connection with them? And I can think of three questions that we need to ask ourselves too.
Yeah.
If you'll think through these, I think they're helpful in kind of honing in on a better way of connecting with people. The first one, am I focused on connecting with others? If I was to turn that into an open-ended question, I would say, how do you stay focused on connecting with others? What are the indicators that in your life that you can say, I am connecting with people. I am making it about them and not about me. I'm focused on serving them and empowering them. Um, and so I think that's an important question. Another one is, it's a question of my attitude. Do I have the right attitude? And what does the right attitude look like when it comes to connecting with people? And I think it's those that that way of getting out of your own ego, getting out of your own sense of whether it be your own pride, your own your own focus on yourself. It's taking the attitude of a servant leader rather than just the simple leader that needs people to do something.
Yeah.
So in having the right attitude, and then finally another point, and these, I think, asking these kind of questions, they help us check ourselves. And so, am I communicating the attitude of selflessness? Am I embodying that? Am I allowing people to see that in me, rather than, like you mentioned earlier, Charles? Are people, do they know that I'm wanting to help them, or am I wanting something from them? Can they trust me, or am I giving off the vibe that I've got some kind of angle
Yeah.
here? So, that attitude of selflessness, it's really important that people not only see that, but we have to ask that of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Am I communicating that attitude of selflessness? Um, and so those are good. Those are good personal checkpoints.
Yeah, absolutely. Those keep us on track and moving in the right direction. And so just some a practical suggestion would be simply this: spend our time trying to think from others' perspectives and explore what would be important to them. Um, Man, you want to talk about something that's difficult, that's counterintuitive, is that now, as we're leading, as we're communicating, we need to spend time thinking about the other person's perspective. So when I communicate, am I just trying to get my point across, or am I communicating in a way? If you're going to make connections with people, you're going to have to communicate in a way that you're considering others' perspectives and begin to explore what would be important to them. Um, you can connect with people if you're willing to get away from your own agenda, to think about others and to try to understand who they are and what they want. Again, we're trying to move away from simply communicating. We want to make connections because the power, the influence, leadership lives in those connections. And so we've got to consider the other person, or the other group, in a small group, in a large group. It's not enough. It's not enough to communicate. We have to be willing. We have to want to connect with those audiences. Again, if it's a one-on-one, a small group, or a large group, we have to have that desire, to want to connect with them. Because again, we're not communicating just to get information out. You talked about creating content earlier, Bruce.
Mhm.
Man, though, I don't think the world needs more content. If I think there's enough content out right now that we've got plenty of content. We
Mm.
need people that want to make connections, that that want to live in that intersection of life and of leadership. And that's what happens when you make connections with people in our communication.
Mm.
Um, so think about the other person's perspective. So that leads us to some application, and again, just maybe kind of a recap of what we've done so far. Our A few of the big ideas we've had today is that we want to connect with people at all levels, and the principle for today has been connection, or connecting is all about others. It's never about me. It's all about other people, and so kind of a key concept is this, that connection happens when the other person feels valued. And so, Bruce, with that in mind, if we're talking about a one-on-one setting, what are some practical how-tos that we can help others feel valued and they can begin to feel connected?
Yeah, one of the things we haven't really talked about today, and I think it typifies. First of all, it typifies someone that really values another person,
Hmm.
um, and it also communicates to a person that you value them, and that is being a good listener.
Yeah.
And talk about something that's counterintuitive when you're a communicator. I think we woefully undervalue how important it is in communication to be a listener. And I think, in fact, a great exercise to do. And I was going to suggest this earlier, but I knew we were going to be getting into this portion of the discussion, so I saved it. But a great exercise to work on your listening skills is to put yourself in a position to practice listening with people and listen for their values. Come out of a
Mm-hmm.
conversation and be able to say, okay, based on what that person talked about today, I understand this is what they value. Um, these are their dreams. These are some things that I see in them that I actually value as well. So, getting into those shared experiences, those shared values. When you talk about values of your own life and other people have those same values, then that is a deep connection sometimes that just goes beyond anything in terms of people skills. That's like that shared experience. And when you're awakened to those values in other people, then it's really important to understand those, and because you can build your relationship on those kinds of things. That's a lot more there's a lot more depth there when you begin to identify a person's values and compare them with your own. That when you make those connections, that's a lot deeper than um, liking the same restaurant or liking the same NBA team. It's
Hmm.
about sharing deeper issues of life. And so when you think about connecting one-on-one, you always have to say, what am I going to do to increase my ability to connect one-on-one? And listening has got to be up there, becoming a
Yeah.
better listener. Charles, what about the group? How do we connect with the group?
Well, when we're in a small group setting, we want to begin to discover and identify the strengths of each person within the group. That is it's a phenomenal way to make connections and to connect. And um, we've talked about some of the services, I guess you will, that we offer. Individually that people can take advantage of. And one of those things that I'm thrilled to offer is the DISC assessment. It's the John Maxwell method of DISC, personality assessment and behaviors. And in that, when you take that assessment, you'll get about a 30-page report. And within that report is certainly the whole report is just top quality. But there's one page in that report that is just absolute gold. And it's an overview of the different types of personalities, the D, the I, the S, and the C. And it gives it gives some summary statements about what each of those people are, or those personality types are, and how to relate to those types of personalities and how not to relate. And so when it gives you the confidence that when you walk into a small group or you go to the small group setting, that you can take a sheet like that and begin to get some basic understanding of personality types and behaviors,
Mhm.
and you can sit in a small group and listen to the conversation, like you've said, be a good listener. So in that small group, listen, and you can begin to discover and identify the strengths of each person. You'll begin to say, "Well, I'm listening to them talk, and some of those words, some of their verbiage is on this sheet that was in my disc report of, all right, so here's how I can begin to communicate, to make connections with them. Here's some
Mhm.
things that maybe I need to shy away from and not interact with them in these ways." And so it's just a powerful tool to help us. Because some might say, "Well, how do I identify their strengths without just coming right out and saying, 'Excuse me, what are your strengths?'" That'd be weird. But when you have some new knowledge and some new experience there, you can take things like a disc and have some basic understanding of that. And I know there are many other personality kind of assessments and models.
Mhm.
Use those as well, but gain some understanding there so that when you're in a small group, just in conversation, you can say, "All right, they're leaning toward being a C or an S, and
Mhm.
so here's how I can connect with them." Secondly, would be in a small group setting, acknowledge the value that each person's strengths and potential and their potential contributions. So again, we talked about valuing the other person. Do that in a small group. People want to be valued. Um, I, Listen, I know what it's like. I've experienced what it's like to be in a small group setting and to be valued. And on the other hand, I know what it's like, and I've experienced what it's like to not be valued. I'll
Mhm.
take value, please. Uh,
Yeah.
People want to be valued. So do unto others as you would want that to be done unto you. I've read that somewhere before. Um, so we acknowledge their value and their strengths and their potential contributions. Every person has something to contribute in a group, and if we can be the person who helps draw that out of people, um, then there's potential for great connection there. Um, Third would be invite input and allow people to lead in their area of strength. And then here's the reflection question: what are you going to do to increase your ability to connect in a group? We talked about a few different ways. So of those three, or you may have another thought that's been generated through this discussion. But what are you going to do to increase your ability to connect in a group? So Bruce, that takes us from small groups. So now let's talk about the large group. When you're on the platform, and you're speaking to the congregation, or you're speaking to the class, or how do we connect with an audience?
Yeah, it's some of those same principles are still at play. Anything you can do with an individual or group, they can translate
Hmm.
to an audience. Now, um, I think it was Harry Truman, President Truman. Um, I remember reading a story about when he came into the office. Of course, he succeeded Roosevelt after Roosevelt passed, and but I think it was a story after one of his first state dinners. One thing he did is he went he excused himself from the table with these different heads of state and diplomats, and he went into the kitchen and he spoke directly to the chefs and the assistants, and he just let them know how this dinner couldn't have been done without their
Hmm.
service and their help, and that made such an impression on the staff because no one in the kitchen could ever remember a president actually doing that
Yeah.
from a state dinner or any other kind of dinner to actually take time out of that. um, and so there was that sense of it stood out. It raised his visibility to
Hmm.
them. And I want us to just say, and we haven't said this yet, but we're not endorsing anything being manipulative. We're talking about authentic connections with people. If you
Absolutely.
just want to if you just want to do these because you're wanting to get something out of a person,
Yeah.
you're missing the point. You're missing the point of what it means to make meaningful connections. Meaningful connection does not equal manipulation, and but so it is important to really work on that. And so just like you do with individuals and groups, you want to show the audience that you value them, they're important to you.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I think let me start with the end. I think it's important at the end of public communication that you make yourself available on some level to the individuals in attendance. Especially, we have in our Charles, in our Pentecostal tradition of altar ministry.
Hmm.
And so for years, one of the things, in Pentecostal churches, we never had really spiritual directors that other traditions had, like Orthodox and
Hmm.
Lutheran, but still, people look to those altar times with those people on the platform that were doing ministry. When there was altar time, when they came and they prayed for individuals, um, that was our Pentecostal spiritual director. The person that had the spiritual gifts, and there was
Yeah. Yeah.
making those individual connections at altar times. I think it's important to make those connections off the platform with people. I think
Hmm.
that's a meaningful way of connecting with the audience. But let's talk about on the platform. You want to express appreciation. You want to acknowledge that their time coming into this conference or this seminar or sitting in for this Sunday morning, that it's meaningful, and that you want to express your appreciation to them, and you want to communicate to them that you want this to be meaningful for them. So expressing appreciation. Number two, do something special for them. Um, and sometimes it's a gift. Sometimes it could be maybe a signed copy of your book.
Hmm.
It could be a meaningful takeaway. It doesn't have to be anything of tremendous monetary value, but anything that adds value to that experience
Hmm.
is a way to communicate. They're able to walk away with something from this that's tangible and meaningful. So do something special for your audience. And by all means, look at everyone in that audience as a meaningful person.
Yeah.
Just like Maxwell does, when you look out at the crowd, make sure that you're seeing, put numbers on their heads and make sure all those numbers are tens.
Mm.
Um, have high expectations. Larry Crabb talks about one of the important ways you connect with people is you cast vision over their life. You help them to see that there's a better way for them. There's a better outcome if they'll take these steps and put it on them. Make sure they know that they're important in the process of what you're trying to get them to act on.
Mhm.
And then tell them how much you enjoy them. I think I've seen a lot of ministers and communicators fail in um, in the large uh, presentation, being in front of the group when they're so focused on making sure that they do well.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I have a friend, he's a prison chaplain, and he's been a mentor for me through the years, and he tells a story of I think it was Spurgeon who had this young minister come up and preach for the first time, and the minister was very nervous, wanted to do a good job, wanted to come off impressive,
Hmm.
and he kind of strode into the pulpit real pompous, and he's wearing the big robe and just strode in, and um, Spurgeon said he's just the epitome of pride. And he just failed miserably in this message, just stumbled over words, misquoted scripture, walked
Hmm.
down from the platform humiliated. And Spurgeon said, if he had come up like he went down,
Mm.
he could have went down like he came up.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, we need to make sure that the audience knows that we enjoy being here for them.
Yeah. That's
We're
right.
not on the platform for the spotlight. We're on the platform to make an investment in their life.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so that's our story. We're gonna stick to that. We want to serve people,
Yeah.
and we do that by making connections. We want to add value to their life, and so we want to help people get to the places uh, that God has put in their hearts, and we can do that by making connections and serving them. Well, I think we've had a great episode, Bruce. Uh, so we've come to the end, and one takeaway that I've got from today is that Bruce tells stories about Harry Truman, and I tell stories about imaginary friends. So choose wisely who you listen to. But nevertheless, it's always great to have a Five Gifts podcast and be a part of that. Um, Thank you for tuning in with us today.
Yeah. Well, Charles, I just want to say that in your presentation today, I felt highly valued. That your time with us today has just lifted me and elevated me. And that is one of the marks of someone that is connecting well in their communication.
Well, well, thank you, Bruce. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
The other takeaway is I've got my Sharpie. I'm just going to draw a 10 on my forehead and walk around and let everybody know, whether you think it or not, I'm a 10. So,
We have a lot of real estate up here to do those kinds of
hey,
things.
I can put a big 10 on my head. So, yeah.
Oh, man. Well, Charles, next week we're going to be talking about prophetic leadership. And
Okay.
so we want all of our listeners to tune in for that. And in fact, please share our podcast with others. We're growing. We're starting to see some real surges on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as the different podcast outlets. So, encourage your friends to listen. If you think this has been valuable for you, to share it with them, let them know about it. And as always, you can like and leave comments below. And we're so grateful that you've shown up here. And we really do want this to be a good experience for our listeners, and we want it to be practical, but also elevating to their life and their calling in ministry.
Yeah.
But we'll see you next week on the Five Gifts podcast.
God bless. And hey, Leroy Ziegler, if you're out there, smash that like button. Hit me up. It's been a while. God bless.